Amsterdam Kitchen. Join us live on Saturday mornings
from 10 till 12
on Broadcast Amsterdam.
Or catch up later.
It's all online. Damn Kitchens with me, Geli Carney, cooking up fun in Amsterdam. So our guest today on Amsterdam Kitchen is Brad Vanstone of Plant-based Cheese. Brad began making his own vegan cheeses here in Amsterdam about 2 years ago, selling it at open markets around the city. He's now on the cusp of launching his range to a much wider market. Hi, Brad.
Good morning.
We're so happy to have you here with us today. Thanks for coming into the studio. I want to talk a little about the story of plant-based cheese, but also about the challenges of converting dyed-in-the-wool dairy cheese lovers to more environmentally friendly plant-based alternatives. So before we get into that, can you just tell us, first of all, a little bit about life before plant-based cheese?
Yeah, of course. It was actually totally unrelated to food, which makes this all the more enjoyable. So I grew up in the UK, as you can probably hear from my twang. And I actually used to live in Brighton, grew up there. It was a super place to spend your youth.
Yeah.
Really awesome place, very creative, very liberal. Then went to uni, didn't really want to go down any kind of corporate route. And so I basically, before this, was working for startups. So I took a UK media company out to New York, and there I met my partner, Morgan. And she got a job over here in Amsterdam about 3 years ago. About 18 months ago, I was still working for a startup, but that is when I first started delving into producing plant-based cheese.
Right, okay. So it really must feel like another life.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Up until 3 years ago. So what exactly was it that made you want to make your own vegan cheese?
It was literally for us at home. So initially I had no inkling that it could ever be an actual business. So we started eating a mainly plant-based diet when we first moved here. We found it super easy to give up meat and milk. Great replacements were available, and also we found that over time we needed them less and less. But cheese was the one thing that I just kept coming back for. I think British people have the same affiliation to cheese as Dutch people. It goes with most meals, and it's a bit of a drug to people, I think.
Exactly, yeah.
So, I guess it was the one thing that I was really missing, the one thing that I'd sometimes still have. And my partner, Morgan, she made this mac and cheese one evening, and it was insanely delicious and insanely cheesy. And that really got me thinking, wow, if this is possible, then, maybe I can make actually hard cheeses, because it was more of a seasoning that she used for a sauce. And so the next weekend I went out, bought a load of ingredients, and just started experimenting. And then a couple of weeks later, I spoke to the company I was working for and said I wanted to do 1 day less a week, so do a 4-day week and just spend basically 3 days a week, including my weekends, just messing around in the kitchen with recipes. And that was about a 6-month period where I was literally just trying to make stuff for us at home. And it was just a hobby, really.
Great. Okay, so what skills, either culinary or professional, and experience were you able to bring to your cheese making?
I think first up, in a startup, you got to be super resilient. And so the nature of kind of the trial and error sort of basis of working really helped, because I never get stuck with anything. I just always find a new workaround or a new solution. I'm a real sort of problem solution guy. So that really helped. I think also just breaking things down into really small chunks really helped. Thinking, okay, I need to do this week. I'm not going to worry about next week. It's very easy to get daunted by what needs to happen in 6 months' time. And it's all about the present. It's just about getting the things that have to be done this week done. That's probably the biggest things I'd say. And also, once I'd started the business, it's kind of the hustle of just going out there and just getting in touch with the people you need to get in touch with. And
that role where you have to be really forward-facing, was that a natural thing for you? Or
I love that part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. And that was something that you that experience of having to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
In your...
I mean, one of the companies we turned up to the US, 2 suitcases we were given 3 months to hire 20 people and open an office. So we had dealings with mafia-type landlords in New York. We had
wow.
students who were older than us that we were hiring. It was crazy. It was a crazy time.
Yeah, but you obviously learnt a lot of interpersonal
a lot of things,
and
how not to do things.
Well, that's just as valid, right?
Which is just as valid, for sure.
So what did you feel the most confident about, or perhaps the least confident about at the beginning, and how has that changed?
I think the concept of me being a cook or a chef, I've always really loved cooking.
Yeah.
And I've always considered myself to be a good cook. But the thought of actually being the person creating like food-related recipes was pretty crazy initially when I first started out. And I just thought, well, surely someone must be doing this better than we are. But as I came to try more and more cheeses and got more and more feedback, I was blown away by what we created. And I really think it was down to the fact that I literally was only experimenting on the recipe for 6 months, not even thinking about what to call it, what the packaging should look like, where we're going to sell it. So I think that was such a big thing. Yeah, that's definitely the thing I was probably most uncomfortable with.
You began experimenting at home. Presumably, as you say, the first few attempts were interesting but not ideal. You've said it took you about 6 months to create something you were happy with.
Yeah.
Was that a real Eureka moment, or was it really just a kind of a grind?
The Eureka moment was when some friends came round for dinner and we pulled it out the fridge and everyone was like, what's this? And I explained that I'd been experimenting with these plant-based cheeses, and everyone started eating them and they were gone in seconds. And everyone was just blown away with the flavors, and I was just staggered that the response was so good. And so that evening I can vividly remember going to bed, and I didn't sleep a wink, because then all of a sudden I was thinking, wow, this could actually be a thing. And so I booked a market straight away the next morning, which was one of the best things I could have done. Yeah, I basically had 2 weeks then to think about the name, the packaging, where I was getting the ingredients, and that was such a good step.
That must have been quite intense, 2 weeks to kind of...
Yeah, it was intense, but those kind of pressures are important, and there's no time like the present.
Yeah. So you started selling your cheese at Amsterdam markets. Was it just one particular market, or did you try several? I tried quite a few. I've done my fair share of Amsterdam markets, and they are glorious. There's nothing better than a market. It's so much fun. So elaborate.
Yeah. Okay. The two standout markets are the one in De Holland, which is the Makers Market. It's once a month. It's fantastic. So many cool entrepreneurs. A lot of them environmentally focused, but everyone's making really awesome stuff. Then another really good one is the Sunday Market. So this one's a lot bigger. It's in Wester Park. Again, quite crafty, but just a slightly bigger version. Well, definitely a bigger version of the Makers Market, and maybe more food related. The audience in these markets, were they broadly the same, or? I would say the Sunday Market is the best from a genuine audience perspective, because the De Holland Makers Market has a very kind of curated audience, not on purpose, but just by nature of the nature of area. Where it is, and also because it's got the food hall next to it. So a lot of tourists are coming through to the food hall who are of a similar disposition. Yeah. Whereas the Sunday Market, you can get anyone coming along to that. Yeah. And it's more of a local market, so you really get to understand what the local people want. But the beautiful thing about the market is on any given day, you're going to get a 5-year-old kid come up and then an 8-year-old granny. They're going to have totally different opinions. So that's the beautiful thing about the market. So what was the most helpful feedback? I couldn't signal out one thing, but I would say that from a feedback perspective, there's no better place to get it. You're literally getting the total mix of people from and it's a live experience, right? They're tasting it in front of you, which you don't, if you're buying it off the supermarket shelf, you never witness. Exactly. There's great feedback about flavour, the appearance, the way we curated the stands, the packaging. Things resonated. And although I never actually sat there with a checklist, over time, all of this information is going in and is shaping the decisions you're making. So it's so useful to do marketing.
You would recommend that to anyone?
I couldn't recommend anything more than if you have any kind of product, go and do a market, because it's the best way to get some initial feedback.
Amsterdam Kitchen.
So cheese making and all the ingredients and paraphernalia that goes with it, eventually it started to take over your home and daily life. So what was that like?
Well, I think it was probably a tricky experience for my girlfriend. So we, at one stage, had 3 fridges dotted around the house. We had 200 kilos of nuts at one point. There was one order I made that sat on the balcony overnight because we didn't have enough fridges. It was the winter, and it was a beautiful cold evening, which was perfect. It was a big project to take on in my apartment, but I'm very glad I did it there, both from a cost perspective, but also it was a very raw experience, and one that was tricky at times because for about 6 months I was spending 4 to 5 days, probably at least 50 hours a week just making cheese. That's not including the markets or the deliveries or thinking about any kind of new opportunities or branding or communication. You know,
it's just
it was
you're
crazy.
on
So
in a tunnel, just got to do this.
And I went through probably 6 blenders. I could definitely write several good articles about blenders.
We might come back to you on that one.
So it was a fascinating time, very meditative at times. You just get in this flow. So there were definitely stressful moments, but there were also very calming moments.
I love the image of you storing the nuts in the attic. There's just so many parallels with the sort of trading history of Amsterdam and merchants storing all their stuff up there as well. How has living in Amsterdam influenced the success of plant-based cheese?
I mean, I can only speak for maybe London or New York, but there's no way I could have launched this in those cities. I don't think. They're just so fearsome and dog eat dog. Good places, but they're harsh cities. Amsterdam is a very forgiving city and a very welcoming city for anything new. And I also think just the size of it. Like if I was to have an order in South London and I was living in East London, that could take me an hour and a half, especially on my old back feet, to get down there. So here, an order was no longer than 20 minutes away. Where I got most of my ingredients at the food centre was 5 minutes from my doorstep. So many of my customers were within a mile. The markets that I went to within a mile. There were so many favourable things.
So as the success of plant-based cheese grew, you realised you'd have to expand. So was that a gradual realisation, or was it a bit more of a kind of heart-stopping moment?
I would say that I'm always someone that's looking to grow things. If I think I've got something good that's going on, I want to show other people about it. Yeah, I think that it was probably spring this year when we were at the crossroads of, is this a small batch plant-based cheese company for just here in Amsterdam, or is this something that I want to grow far beyond this? And I think the biggest reason I decided to grow it is the production. It was just so all-encompassing. And also with the production, even that needed to change a little bit. We needed to get a space, we needed to get bigger equipment, probably needed to hire someone. And I thought, right, it's probably best to outsource this and to have someone else producing it who has all the certification, who has the clean, beautiful facilities, people who are already used to making food products and they have the distribution and they can package on site and do all of these things that were all massive mini headaches in their own right.
Sure, and also, but kind of having to let go a little bit.
That's tricky. But when I think about the environmental reasons behind this and the real need for cheese, and it's time that, there were some proper products here that could really compete with cheese and make people's decision a bit easier to give it up. Because it is the final stumbling block.
So it's kind of,
for a lot
if you're
of people.
a meat eater, it's bacon that trips you up, I think. And I think, if you're looking to switch to a non-dairy life, then cheese is what's going to do for you.
Yeah.
Some of your ingredients do have to come from far-flung places. So how do you square that with a sort of more ethical side to what you're trying to do?
Generally speaking, a plant-based cheese will be 9 times less impactful. We're actually at the moment drilling down into what the exact impact of each of our cheeses is compared to their dairy equivalent. But in terms of our supply chain, this is something we spent a lot of time on the last 6 months. So we get our almonds from Spain, which is a lot better than California, where 80% are from. And in the right conditions, nuts can basically sequester carbon, so they can capture carbon and they can have a net positive impact on the environment around them.
Know that.
So we are finding producers who are as close to that as possible, and we're finding producers who are regeneratively farming. So for a quick summary on regenerative farming, it's basically a dual crop system where you grow 2 crops in conjunction with one another, and one crop might take nutrients that the other can provide.
Got it, yeah.
And it's basically ensuring that the topsoil of the of the land is incredibly nutritious, retains its health, retains its nutrients. The plant gets enough water. There's no pesticides used. It also ensures there's a social side to it, so the workers paid a minimum wage. They're not working in awful conditions, and they're not underage. So it's as holistic a label as possible. It's 10 times what organic is. So we are sourcing our bulk ingredients from these types of providers at the moment. So our nuts are from regenerative farmers, but the other ingredients we're now working on. So we still have a long way to go.
Sure.
But we have the path, to get to the right point.
So far in the story of plant-based cheese, give me your highs and your lows, just one of each.
Let's start with the lows because it's always good to end with the highs. So I was on my bike one day, and it was only a small order, so I wasn't on the back feet, and a moped just came creaming into me and just totally cut me up.
Aye.
So that was just the whole cheeses just fell onto the floor, just absolutely obliterated. And I was already a little bit at the end of my tether that day because it had just been a long day, and I had to go back and remake them all, essentially. So that was a low. Highs, I'm going to pick a high actually for the future. When I see the product on shelf in store, that is going to be the first point at which I really properly celebrate, because that's a big moment for us.
Amsterdam Kitchen.
Brad, the tagline on your Instagram profile reads "Plant-based cheese makers for dairy cheese lovers." I love that line. It really succinctly puts the issues surrounding modern diets and food production into a neat sentence. I've already shared with you that I'm not a vegan, though I do like to think that I'm a fairly light meat consumer. However, I am reluctant to embrace veganism fully because, as we've spoken about already, this very ingrained love for dairy products in general and cheese in particular. So would you describe yourself as a cheese lover?
Absolutely. I wouldn't be doing this if I wasn't. And I think we need to kind of backtrack a little bit on the whole vegan movement, because for me, it's far too aggressive and pigeonholes people into ideals of perfection that are just completely unreachable for so many people and unattainable. And what we should really be looking to, I think, in order to make the most impact, is for people to be swapping out products when they find an alternative that is as good, if not better. And basically a flexitarian diet where the bulk of what we eat is made from plants, and that any dairy or fish that we consume is very high quality, and we've taken the time to really look at where it's from and look at where it's grown. And I see it as a responsibility of myself as a producer of a plant-based product, not to just make a product that's good for the environment, but to start with taste and flavour, because food has always been about those things.
Absolutely,
And so if it doesn't taste good, it doesn't matter how good the story is or how environmentally friendly it is. Yeah, it's always going to fall short. And I'm not actually interested in making cheese for vegans because that is a tiny group of people and it's not having enough impact. I'm interested in making cheese for everyone and for cheese for people who love cheese, love cheese. So, it's for many people, it's the most loved food type. So we're going right into the eye of the storm. But we've got there with a few, so we know we can do it.
So what are the qualities that when you're creating a cheese? What are you really looking to create?
Flavor first. The hardest thing is texture with plant-based cheese because milk is the most incredible binding agent. And when you put it in a fridge, it solidifies in an incredible way that other plant-based products, just don't do it quite the same way. Or, we're working on those. Appearance is obviously really important as well. But I would say taste and appearance, we have no issues with. It's texture. And so instead of relying on the milk, you've got to use things like binding agents. You've got to solidify the cheese. So we've started with softer cheeses and things like a fondue because the texture is much easier to recreate. Yeah. But we will get a hard cheese, and that will be a real success point, especially here, I think, in the Netherlands with Houder is consumed by over 50%. Yeah. 50% of cheese is Houder here that's sold. So it's
quite a market to get in on if you can.
Amsterdam Kitchen.
In an interview with the Guardian newspaper earlier this year, you described the UK market as highly polarised between dairy and plant-based consumers. So have you found that to be the same here in the Netherlands?
I found it to be a way more pragmatic place. It's why I really like the Dutch people because they're quite frank and honest, but I think they're also very pragmatic, and when you give someone enough evidence, they're always willing to change their mind. Whereas in the UK, people will stick to their decision regardless as to whether or not they think they're right or wrong.
I can't think where we could apply that idea.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, sure, we get the odd comment, of course, but I would say most people, if they find that the taste is the same, the availability is good, the cost is good, they're very, very interested and open to it. And those are the priorities that we look at. And then the environmental story comes after that because for many people, they know all about the environmental story. Everyone does pretty much now. So it's an important story when you couple those other factors together with it. But if you don't nail those other factors, taste, cost, convenience, then the environmental story gets watered down and lost.
Secondary. So, obviously, the history of dairy cheese making goes back. Dates back to prehistory, and clearly in that time, there's been an awful lot of knowledge and skill developed. Yeah. Do you see plant-based cheeses as having that same potential?
For sure. So, I mean, we use a lot of similar techniques, is what I'd say as a starting point. So the process of culturing, fermenting, souring can be applied to plant-based cheese making. In terms of the ingredients that are used, we are absolutely in our infancy, and things like nuts, I honestly don't think we'll be using nuts in 5 years' time, potentially. We'll be using things like beans or pea isotope or another kind of base ingredient.
Sorry to interrupt, but pea isotope, what is what?
It's basically a form of protein, a very high concentrated protein. Yeah. Because with cheese, you're basically looking for a high content of protein, carbohydrate, and fat. The beautiful thing about nuts is the fat is not saturated, it's healthy fats. So if you can find a product that has a similar sort of genetic makeup to milk, then that is an amazing base ingredient.
Okay, so maybe not nuts for the long-term future, but as you say, lots of lots of the technique going into cheese making is applicable. I mean, I'm excited about that as a prospect. I think that's really what will persuade people like me to move across. How easy or difficult has it been to start a business and to expand your business here in the Netherlands?
Yeah, I think a food-related business is particularly tricky because I think anything that's physical and is an actual product is particularly hard because it comes with so many regulations and so many added considerations. That being said, I think looking at the other places I've lived, it's a much easier place to do it than other places. The support networks and the people here are super. We're part of organisations like Impact Hub in Amsterdam, which is amazing. Those people are so genuine and they have such amazing networks. And anyone who's starting any kind of social environmental project, look no further than Impact Hub. It's an amazing place. And there's lots of support from the government out there as well, which is really cool. Like I've met with a lot of people from the government here, and they're normal human beings.
It's very easy to think otherwise. Yeah,
they can't even answer a question. So there's a lot of good stuff going on here.
Fantastic. Okay, so it's obviously an exciting few months ahead for you. I wondered if you are able to elaborate a little bit more on where plant-based cheese is going.
Yeah, for sure. So in May, we took our products off the shelves in Amsterdam, and that was a tricky decision. But the reason we did that is because we switched production to just south of The Hague. So we're partnered with a company called Rascal, who produce about 12 to 15 other products for other companies. And in October, we will be launching at retail. So via a wholesaler, will be at Co-op, Albert Heijn, Jumbo and Dean. So 100 stores across those four. Yeah. There's a couple of other retailers who we're getting quite close with as well. We will be online with a big retailer as well, but I'm not going to say who that is just yet.
Okay.
And we also are likely to have a couple of Eureka, so on trade, deals confirmed by then. So definitely De Quaker, we're going to be with them, but one other as well is looking very, very likely. So in between all of this, we've been working on a rebrand. So Plantbased Cheese will be rebranded. We're going to be changing our kind of company name to Willicroft, which is the name of my grandfather's farm. My grandfather was a dairy farmer. Yeah. And the whole slogan and branding behind Willicroft will be "This is not cheese." So all of the cheeses will be named after the cheese they're replacing. So this is not fondue, this is not gorgonzola, this is not ricotta,
nice,
etc. And in between all of this, we've been looking at things like the packaging as well. So we wanted that to be as sustainable as possible. So for a couple of our packaging choices, we're using tin, which is 95% recyclable here in the Netherlands. You can't really find a better material here. And then we've also been building out the team and raising a little bit of money as well. So it's been busy.
Very busy, no doubt.
Period.
Yeah. And so are you able to, so this has obviously been all-consuming, and I just wondered if you've had a chance to sort of see beyond it for the future. You know, I don't know what time frame we're talking about, but maybe start with, you know, this time next year, where would you want to be, and maybe again in 5 years' time?
I think we'll be in the US as well next year. We're going to do a pilot there. We've got a partner there that we want to do a trial with. Potentially the UK as well next year. In 5 years' time, I want to be sourcing all of our ingredients regeneratively. I want us to be the thought leader in the plant-based cheese sector. And by that, I mean I want us to be providing tools where every plant-based cheese maker can measure their impact, so that the consumer can quantify what they're doing every time they purchase one of the plant-based cheeses. Mm-hmm. And also I want my dad to be eating our cheese rather than dairy. Because if he is, then a heck of a lot of other people will be.
You've done your job.
Yeah.
That's a very tangible target. I like that. So finally, what advice would you have for other food-led entrepreneurs out in Amsterdam?
Get out to the markets as soon as possible and go and speak to Impact Hub about one of their accelerators.
Fantastic, Brad. Thank you. It's been a real pleasure to talk with you today. Thanks again for joining us here on Broadcast Amsterdam. Damn Kitchens with me, Geli Carney. Cooking up fun in Amsterdam. Amsterdam Kitchen. Join us live on Saturday mornings
From 10 till 12.
on Broadcast Amsterdam.
Or catch up later.
It's all online.